I mentioned before in the past this idea of AI literacy. And at the time, it was the concept that you understood how AI worked to the extent that you can understand what should be done with AI versus what shouldn't be done with AI. Now, this is several months later, and the more normal person, the non power user, is getting more involved inside of the space, which is great. However, one of the things that I'm noticing is, but I'm still trying to call this AI literacy, but I don't even know if that's the best term. But essentially, it's the recognition of what is sort of the default output from various uh, models. For example, there's been a lot of output that's been produced around Claude. And with that, people have been very impressed with things such as long, expansive explanations via documents that are well researched, that have been produced by a singular Claude skill, which is fantastic if the people know what a Claude skill is. And not only that, but also how to build and produce their own. Not only build and produce their own Claude skill, but also structure it in a way so that it maximizes and really optimizes the token usage in order to get that final output. Seeing the final output itself isn't the impressive part. In many cases, I've been provided something that looks quite impressive. It has good information. The value itself is within the content that's been on the output, but the actual production of the document itself is not impressive. That is something that has, by many means, been recognized by many that are not as familiar with the AI space as very impressive. A lot of work was done, a lot of effort was placed in. And my expectation is as there's more exposure to this over time, people start to recognize, well, the level of effort to produce that output actually wasn't that high, but rather they did XYZ. This is what they got. The information and the content inside of it is very, very valuable and has its uses that are going to be, leveraged and done with, et cetera, moved on through the pipeline for whatever means. And then I see another group where we're still dealing with what's clearly automated responses via text, where just from particular characters, the M dash is the most popularly well known one, but amongst many that really still are not messing with this stuff, those little M dash identifiers are still not seen as clearly put in by AI. Going further down the texting route, there's more patterns I'm starting to recognize where it's not this, it's that. This sort of patterns of negative value 1 and negative value 2, it's positive solution number 3. These sort of sentence structure patterns I see repeated over and over again to the point where my eye has been exposed to enough that I can easily see it and identify it. However, to those that aren't constantly being bombarded with AI, are not as clearly able to distinguish that. And that's sort of why I'm calling it this sort of like AI literacy, the ability to read AI, understand AI, and what's being produced by AI. Right now, images, in the very beginning, images was a really good example where the bar was very low, right? You have 6 fingers, and well, that's clearly produced by AI, right? And now the image production is a much higher bar to identify. Are you looking at the composition? Are you looking at the lighting? And to be fair, in some cases, it is impossible. I don't care what anybody says, they're going to assume something is produced by AI. simply because either it's too good or you can even do a test and say this was produced by AI. Moving further down the rabbit hole, you have now video. Now, video is really in this interesting window, and my favorite example of this is movie trailers. So, Doomsday is an excellent example where there is a lot of fake produced AI content around leaked footage or leaked scenes around the Marvel Doomsday movie. And what you can do is you can put that in with the post editing process, do whatever. Maybe you're using seed dance, get some cool combat going on between characters, don't have to worry about copyright. And then what you end up having is this excellent high quality video that genuinely is on par with Hollywood. And then you can take it one step further, make it inside of a video editor so that it looks like it's being recorded from a movie screen. You add in some audio of a fake audience, or even just modify and blur and really make the quality be diminished so that it is even more difficult to identify if it's actually a real leak or it's just something that's been produced. Now, you'll see always within the comment area of that it's clearly AI. However, the ability to identify and distinguish, especially with all those additional layers, becomes increasingly difficult. And there's not only that, but additional video content where you might be able to identify the human element via the voice. So if the voice doesn't quite sound right, then there's something there. However, if the voice is being tweaked only in a segment or the audio is being redubbed in something like ElevenLabs for only a small portion, those are things that can easily be done and are advantageous to the video editors to fix common mistakes. Increasingly so, it's going to, and probably is already at a point where we've consumed a number of content that is produced by AI or edited with AI in some manner that we've been completely oblivious to. Now, I don't propose any good solution for this. I don't know any good way of getting around this other than just exposure to and recognition of breaking the uncanny valley. That is, the uncanny valley is sort of this dip that takes place where things can look kind of cool, and they're stylized, and then there's this sort of just giant chasm that exists because it's not quite real enough to pass the test, if you will. And it's not styled enough to pass the artistic sort of leeway that we would give it typically. I don't know about you, but for me as a power user and constantly using AI in my daily / hourly work, I do like to get the insights of many of the people who are not in the AI space, who are what they consider themselves not technically competent. I do like to see sort of, are they using these tools? How are they using these tools? Especially roles that are non-traditionally technical, that are non-traditionally inside of a space that uses a lot of technology, or they would identify themselves as, oh, I'm not a very tech guy. But now with the bar lowering for AI entry just continuously being lowered and the output of quality being continually higher, what is the sort of current state of affairs as a median? Where is the vast majority of people at? And not only across people, but also across the different verticals, across the different positions, disciplines. I do kind of always check in with a lot of my friends, family, to kind of get a sense for, what do you understand about AI thus far? How are you using it thus far? And I am constantly surprised by either A, how far ahead they are, surprised by some of their misunderstandings about what it can and can't do, but also where they do lean a little bit on the question of, is this AI? Is this not AI? Should I use this? Should I not use this? Security. And those are all reasonable things, I think, to have questions about and to explore. But it's clear to me not everybody's really getting into the nitty gritty. And because unless you really need to, why would you be going on your own, spending multiple hours a day learning about this stuff, testing it out, using it yourself, constantly trying to elevate your abilities and skill sets in this sort of new space? A space that I would argue is going to become increasingly fundamental to any progress in the job market, into careers, and so much more. So, anyways, those are just a little bit of my thoughts on this topic. Would love to hear yours. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day.